Hey, for our 8-page project, you are going to be coloring the paper before you draw on it. And as you can see with this, I started with dark colors, I layered browns, and I dripped black ink down the page. Another ink project I did where I colored the watercolor paper, you could see I have layers of browns and oranges and reds and all sorts of neutral colors with black. And there's different ways you can do this. You could see this was the watercolor paper and I prepared it before I did my drawing. Now in both of these cases, I used dark colors because I knew I was using a white ink on top of it. What I'm going to demonstrate is how to use some lighter colors, and so you could use a lighter color ink. Now for this project, you're going to be preparing this whole big piece of paper, but I'm just going to demonstrate on this smaller piece. What you're going to need though, is you're going to need a hair dryer or something to help speed up the drying process, and that helps you create different effects depending on what you're going for. We're going to be using inks. You could use watered down acrylic for this too, because you're going to be doing series of washes. So I'm going to start off by just putting some blue on here. I'm going to add some water to the ink because I want it to be pretty transparent. Again, I want to keep this light. And I'm not going to coat over the whole thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of put some brush strokes over this. So again, I'm going to be building up layers. Now, for what I am doing, I want to dry this in between all my layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my heat gun and dry it out. Okay, you want to make sure all the moisture is out of here, because what will happen if I brush over this while it's wet, then I'm going to blur the colors together, and I don't want to do that. One thing you do kind of keep in mind, if you are choosing to use a heat gun, be careful, because heat guns on the highest settings will catch the paper on fire. A heat gun will catch wood on fire. So a hair dryer is probably a safer way to go if you don't know how to use a heat gun properly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another wash of color. And I'm going to water this down a little bit because I want it to be pretty translucent. I'm going to let this green kind of make a green. All right, sometimes the heat gun will warp the paper, so you just got to kind of gently bend it back. We're really going to be distorting the paper here because we're going to be adding a lot of water and then drying it and adding a lot of water and drying it. So that was wet on dry techniques where I'm drying it in between. Now I want to show you some wet on wet techniques. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some clear water. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the paper completely with just clear water. And while the paper is wet, I want to make sure the whole thing's wet. Then what you do is you can take this, and you can just drip. And look how that bleeds right into it. Now if you get too much on there, you could always take a tissue and soak up some of the drops. Or if it goes to the edge, soak up that liquid at the edge. You can try this out.